Hi,
My name
Louise.
is Louise Stark, and I look after books on Google Play. And we are really excited to be joining forces this week with the Brisbane Writers Festival to bring you a series of hangouts on air with attending authors. And I'm very excited today to welcome critically acclaimed Australian writer Peter Barry to our hangout on air. Peter was sort of burst onto the literary scene last year with his novel I Hate Martin Amis and et al., which for its title alone deserved to make some fuss. So he changed the Australian landscape a little bit with that. And this year his new novel is We All Fall Down, which explores the impact of the global financial crisis on an Australian couple. We All Fall Down has actually been picked up by Get Reading. The top 50 Australian books this year are being promoted at the moment, which is very, very exciting, and it's wonderful that Peter's work has been picked up for that. So Peter, welcome. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks, Louise.
You have spent your career writing, haven't you, as a copywriter, firstly in advertising. When did you know that you loved writing and wanted to make it a career?
It sounds a bit strange, this, but I actually wanted to become a writer, a real writer, as I call it, when I was 7 years old. But I always thought, oh, I'd love to be a writer. I never did very much about it. Strangely enough, I was in Australia in the 70s, way back then, and I was offered a job in the top creative agency in Sydney at the time, by a creative director, and I accepted the job, and then my wife and I decided we weren't going to stay in Australia, but we'd go back to the UK. And I'm still embarrassed by the fact that I went back to the creative director who had offered me this job and told him that I wanted to give up being a copywriter and become a real writer, write novels. And I went back to the UK. Within a year of going back to the UK, this creative director brought out his first book, and over the next few years he won the Booker twice, he won the Commonwealth Award for Writers, he's won every award in the book apart from the Nobel Prize, and that creative director was Peter Carey. I still cringe with embarrassment when I think of what I told him.
Oh, that's fantastic. Have you been in touch to let him know that you have actually become a real writer now?
No, I haven't dared go near him. He was so angry when I told him I wasn't going to join the agency. But I'm a great admirer of him. I think he's a terrific writer.
And so you did spend many years then as a copywriter, so writing has always been your bread and butter, but
Yes,
only published your first book last year.
Yes, I wrote a lot of books when I was young, and I think they were very immature. In fact, I know they were very immature. And then I kind of got waylaid with career and bringing up children and the usual excuses. And it wasn't until I think about the early 90s when I really buckled down and thought I want to be a writer and started writing. And my first book, I Hate Martin Amis et al. It won the Victorian Premier's Award for an unpublished manuscript, and I thought that was the beginning. I thought, oh, great, I'm going to take off now because every other winner had been published. But I spent 2 years with a major publishing house being mentored, and after 2 years, I'd love to name them, but I don't think I should. After 2 years, they turned around and said, no, we're not going to publish it. So in absolute disgust, I threw the book in my bottom drawer. And it was about a year later when Transit Lounge contacted me and said, oh, what happened to that book? And they brought it out, and it has gone very well. So even though I've had a long career writing, it's only very recently that it started to, in inverted commas, pay off.
I think I Hate Martin Amis et al. It's a really interesting idea for a novel about a young man who goes to Sarajevo to be a sniper because he wants something to write about. That's quite an extreme length to sort of create a writing career. So your own experience is maybe slightly fed in, but not quite so extreme. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. It's certainly based on experience. I mean, and I do have a, but not, I was about to say a hatred of publishers. That's probably an exaggeration, but I do have. I think publishers turn down a lot of good writers, and they know they do. I mean, it's really hard nowadays. There's so much good stuff being published, and I think I was very fortunate that this was picked up. I have been rejected. I had four, as the protagonist in that book, I had four novels turned down before I did that one, got that one accepted. And I think I still haven't got it accepted in the UK or the US. No one's picked it up, which surprises me because in the UK and the US, he's a kind of super god, Amos. Everybody kind of worships the guy. Mm. I sent him a copy and he never replied. But in this country, there are a lot of people who don't even know who he is. And I was saying to a friend of mine, I'm really worried the number of people who have come up to me and said, "Who's Martin Amis?" And he turned to me and said, "Peter, start worrying when they ask you who Al is," which I thought was very funny. He watched me and said, "Al."
I was watching Howard Jacobson on Late Line the other night, and he was sort of lamenting the fact that publishers were publishing so many commercial books, and that the charts were being dominated by, were not being dominated by, more challenging literary fiction, so books that make you think. And I thought it was quite interesting that he said it's not necessary for your characters to be liked or loved or warm, that's not what a good book needs to be, but that seems to be what's dominating. Do you sort of share that opinion?
Well, I don't think so, because Milan in I Hate Martin Amis, he's certainly not a lovable character. And in fact, he was reviewed by one reviewer who said that he was amazed that, because it's so negative about publishers, he was amazed that any publisher had actually picked it up. So I think it maybe does help to have a lovable protagonist, but Milan certainly isn't. I thought the protagonist in my second novel, We All Fall Down, was a nice person, in inverted commas, but I've had people also say that he's not a very nice person, which worries me. I think maybe I can't write about nice people.
Well, why should you have to write about nice people? It's not a rule that you have to write about nice people. So let's talk a little bit about We All Fall Down, which has come out this year and been picked up for Get Reading, which is a fantastic promotion for making normal Australians, try something and get started and reignite their reading passions. It seems to be a real novel of our time, about sort of an ordinary family who've stretched themselves with a mortgage, and then the global financial crisis comes along and sort of steamrolls them a bit. Is that how you see Australia at the moment, sort of bulging at the seams with too much want and not enough cash?
Yes. It was a bit of a pet subject of mine. I have very negative feelings about management, strangely enough, and I wanted to write a book about the effects of bad management on ordinary men and women. And I was very proud of that book, in fact, because I started writing it in Crete. I went for a holiday, first time I've been on a holiday specifically to write, and I found this little cottage, on the coast, and locked myself away and started writing the book. And that was June 2008, before the global financial crisis actually really hit. But I remember watching television sometimes over there, which was in Greek. And that was when the Greek demonstration and strikes and everything first started. So I started writing then, and the GFC hit when I was writing the book. So my original intention was to write about the financial world, banks and everything. But I decided eventually that it was a world which was just so complicated. I still don't understand what derivatives are, which everybody goes on about, So I thought, well, I must write about a world I know, because the one thing that is true about advertising is that we deal with so many different kinds of companies. It could be, you know, somebody who makes toothpaste, it could be somebody who makes cars. And I've dealt with a lot of clients over the decades I've been in the business. I've met so many clients. And very rarely have I been impressed by the standards of management that I've come across. I've met people and I think, how on earth do they run this company? You know, how have they got into this position? And I think that's very bad, and I think it's very true in this country that I have no respect, generally speaking. I mean, I know there are good managers, but generally speaking, I think they're lacking an awful lot. And I think the repercussions of that are on ordinary men and women. I think the GFC was caused by bad management, greed, all those other things. And I don't know if we've learned our lessons, honestly. I think banks are still kind of taking everybody for a ride.
So when, you know, I mean, Australia's had an unprecedented sort of boom for so many years, and bad management was hidden in sort of falsely big numbers, and everyone, you know, buying bigger houses because their house prices were increasing so rapidly. So there was this sort of sense of safety, and then the GFC came and just shook all of that up and exposed, as you say, the bad management that had been going on for years. In that way, it does sound like, you know, something that we should be taking more notice of. Australia is, you know, mortgaged to the hilt and really suffering, and I still don't think we've actually seen the GFC. Do you think we've got more to go?
I do. I think I think this country, and everybody says that we've really escaped because of the mining boom, but I think, I don't know, I keep on hearing that it's going to get worse, so there's going to be a huge crash coming up, and it's all being held off until after, you know, the US elections. And I am, maybe it's being a pomp, but I am very pessimistic. I do think that we haven't seen the end of it, yeah. And it's going to hit this country as badly as it's hit the UK and the US. I mean, the UK, where I come from, it sounds appalling to me now what's going on over there. And I think it's going to happen, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting watching the American political race at the moment, and comparing that with our incredibly lackluster politics here. You know, doesn't seem to be any winners in Australia at the moment. There doesn't seem to be any strong leadership or good ideas going around. So it does look like it's going to happen. And so you've written a book about someone who wants to become a novelist and does something quite dramatic about it. You've written about an Australian couple suffering in the GFC, and I think you're working on a third book now, is that right?
I am, yes.
Are you able to share a little bit about that yet, or is it still very secret?
I can tell you roughly about it. It's about a charity in the UK. It's about, it goes back to the time of the Ethiopian famine. And it's based on that. I won't tell you the actual idea because I think it's such a good idea. I don't want to tell everybody about it yet.
So you don't seem to be. I mean, I find with a lot of literary writers, they don't have one particular thing they're going to write about. You take your ideas from various different places. So is your mind open to ideas from wherever they come from?
I think so. Yes. I'm happy to write about anything that appeals to me. I think it's got to appeal to you. You actually really have got to want to write about it. And I think maybe that's from my copywriting background. You work on such a diverse range of products and services, and that's what always appealed to me about that job.
And actually, copywriter is a fantastic skill to have for writing titles.
Yes, well, that's true. I tell you, the negative side of it is every time I write a book, it's far too short. And I'm sure that comes from writing, 30-second TV commercials and very short bits of copy and press ads. I think I'm the only writer I've ever met who writes the first draft of a novel, and it's about 40,000 words, and then I have to think, oh my God, I'm going to have to double this.
Well, I think interesting enough, because I work in the digital world with ebooks, people aren't really bothered by how long a book is anymore. That's not of interest to them. I think when somebody walks into a physical bookshop and sees a fat book and a thin book, it's really obvious. But in the digital world, it doesn't matter. So maybe you can go ahead and write your 40,000 word novels.
Maybe I will. It'll be easier.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with a perfectly crafted, well-written short novel. Long novels that are too long that go on a bit are never good anyway. Tell me a little bit about Get Reading. So how did that come about?
I don't know how it came about. I think the publishers submit books to whoever runs it. It's a federal body, I think, and I think they selected. I don't know how they selected. Sorry, I'm really ignorant about this. I just heard that I was chosen.
But it's amazing. You're one of only 50 writers to be promoted in the Get Reading program. It sounds like from your Victoria Premier's Award to Get Reading, you've actually finally made it to quite a broad audience. Have you seen the impact on your sales?
Well, it's only just started. No, so I haven't. But I'm hoping
not
that
yet.
who's listening today will go out and rush out and buy it.
And are you still working in the advertising world?
Very little. I work for the only green advertising agency in Australia at the moment, which is what interests me. I think is sustainability.
Oh, okay. And going back to sort of We All Fall Down, because Hugh works in an advertising agency, and he's bullied at work and at home, and he's sort of a very vulnerable character. Did you see much of that in advertising? You saw a lot of bad management from your clients, but did you see people get sort of stomped on in that world? It seems like quite a cutthroat industry.
I think it is a very cutthroat industry, and it's one of the most vulnerable as well, because when times turned down, and they turned down as soon as I arrived in this country, and I arrived here in 1990, and it was the start. I think it was the start of where everything began to slide, and it's still going down. When times get hard, the first thing that is sacrificed by big companies is the advertising budget. They look around and they think, how can we save money? Oh yeah, spend less on advertising. So it's a very vulnerable business. And of course, it's changing rapidly now. I mean, when I was in the business, we used to do blockbuster TV commercials, huge full-page press ads and everything, and now it's all this Facebook and whatever it is, internet and everything, which I don't know. It doesn't appeal to me.
And did you meet people like your character Hugh through the years in advertising? Is that why you chose to write about sort of him as an everyman?
I think so. People, having been in advertising all my life, people will read the book and say, "Oh my God, that's so and so, and how could you write about that person?" I say, "No," and I think it's like every novel. Novelists pick from their experience, but they don't actually write about a person. I mean, I think I could say that Hugh is a mixture of a lot of people I've met, But I think the problem is very common. I know a lot of people who have lost their jobs. And I actually worked with somebody in London he'd been with the agency for a very long time. He was pretty old. I was young in those days, but he was pretty old, and he was let go, as they say, or fired, been there for absolute donkey's years, and threw himself under an underground train the next day. So I think, the problem's been around a long time. I think there's not much humanity, I don't think, in business nowadays. Not much care for staff.
Yes, with bad management that you're seeing, that perhaps that's the case. As someone who spent years writing and then trying to get published, do you have any advice for any writers that might be watching now about, how to get started and what to do?
I don't think I have, honestly, Louise. It's incredibly hard. I mean, I think you have really, and it's been said a million times before, I think you have really, really got to want to write. If you haven't got that desire, I mean, when I had Martin Amis turned down by, 20 plus publishers, might have been many more, I put it away and just started my next one. And I'm still doing that. I think if people, I enjoy writing. I don't enjoy writing, actually. Writing's a pain. But I have to write. And what I hate doing is trying to sell what I write. I hate sending books out. I hate all of that paraphernalia. But I think if you really, really want to write, then all you can do is write and just hope that, I think everybody wants to be published. Some people say they don't, but I find that hard to believe. And I think you've just got to keep writing and keep sending it out. And if you've got the strong enough desire and you work hard enough, then it will eventually come true. I mean, people in publishing always say that if you've got real talent, it will eventually be accepted by somebody. And I think that's probably true.
And being published is not just about seeing your book in physical form or whatever, it's about people reading and connecting with your stories. And I guess that is an amazing feeling.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And have you been meeting a lot of your readers at the Brisbane Writers Festival?
Well, I haven't been here long enough, but yes, I've had a few.
Well, I hope you have a really wonderful time here at the festival. It has been an absolute pleasure to meet you and to discuss your work today. And I'm quite excited that you've had 2 books out in 2 years and there's a 3rd one on the way. So good luck with all of your future efforts and good luck with Get Reading. I'm sure that it's going to put your book into the hands of people who may not have found you before. Thank you very much for your time today.
Very kind. Bye.
Bye-bye.